Hello everyone, today we have with us Team NUJS consisting of Mukund Gupta, Priyanshu Kar, Aashkaa Jain and Amitesh Neogi, who have emerged as the quarter finalists at the 22nd Annual International Maritime Law and Arbitration Moot 2023. Congratulations on your remarkable achievement, team. We are very glad to have you share your experience with our audience. So without any delay, let us get started. Can I request you to quickly introduce yourself so we can get started with the questions?
Hi Niharika, I'm Priyanshu Kar. I'm a third year student at NUJS currently. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
I'll go next. I'm Mukund Gupta. I'm currently a second year student at NUJS. And like Priyanshu said, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'll go next. I'm Aashkaa Jain, also a second year student at NUJS. Thank you for inviting us.
Hello Niharika, I'm Amitesh. I'm a second year law student, and likewise, I'm very glad that I'm here.
All right. So can you elaborate on your preparation approach and experiences, focusing on the division of responsibilities and your contribution together as a team? So you can start with explaining briefly the structure of the competition, and then you can approach this question.
I can take this if no one else minds. Essentially, IMLAM doesn't have any national rounds, unlike a lot of other major international moots. So you directly have your world rounds. It's just a single memo submission that you have, generally in the month of May, after your problem is released in the month of January to February. And then you have the oral rounds. Currently, they're being held in the UK for the foreseeable future. But before that, they had on a rotational basis around the globe, essentially. But they happen in the month of July, generally.
Okay. So could anybody
So I'll
elaborate on the... Yes, please.
Sure. I'll just add on to that. Once the problem is released, the problem is actually rather lengthy, unlike the other moods, which is usually like 25 to 30 pages. Ours was a 65-page problem, and we were expecting a second tranche. Luckily, it didn't come for us, but usually it comes in two tranches, 65 pages and 60 pages each. So that also changes a few things because you've started researching on the first tranche, then comes the second tranche. It changes a few things. Luckily, it didn't happen for us, so we were just working with what we had been working from the very beginning. There were 4 issues in total. We divided, so me and Mukund were the speakers. We divided 2 issues each, and we took our researchers for helping us. And so I took Priyanshu, he took Amitesh, and we worked on the 2 issues. What's actually lesser known about MLAM is that the memo doesn't carry any marks. So it's just there for the best memo, best respondent and claimant memo that you get at the end of it. But speaking is what matters the most. So after memo submissions, we really started working for speakings and we gave a lot of practices. So that's what helped.
Right. So moot court competitions often emphasize on oral advocacy skills. Can you share a memorable courtroom moment or particularly a tough question from the judges that your team successfully handled during the moot?
Again, I think if no one else minds, I can take this first. But for me specifically, I remember our quarterfinal round, even though we lost that, but there was this specific moment essentially where we were able to pick up from the opposing team's own bundle, which is their index of authorities, and prove an entire argument wrong from their own authority to prove like there was a fallacy in the claims that they were making. And that was quite well like accepted and recognized by the judges at the end of the round as well, and they were very appreciative of the fact. So despite the fact that we ended up losing that round, that was one of the highlights, at least for me personally. But I'm sure Aashkaa, Amitesh and Priyanshu will have other moments that really were great for them.
Yeah, so that was definitely a great moment. Mukund really got the spotlight by doing that. For me, it was, I think, one of the prelim rounds where a question was asked from the judges. It was asked to our opposing team, and it was the jurisdictional, like, from where do you get that we have the jurisdiction to hear this issue? They were unable to answer that question. And so when it came to me, when I had to speak, when it was my turn to speak, I ended up answering it for them, which was again appreciated by the judges.
Yeah, and mostly, if I can add, another memorable experience which like I personally faced was that though I did not do the speaking initially, like obviously I was not part of the speaking team because they have this very sort of compartmentalized distinction between the fact that researchers cannot speak during the rounds. So Amitesh and I were sitting at the back or at the side, so we were sort of enjoying the speaking rounds, the grilling and all. So, but like the most interesting aspect of it was that when Mukund and Aashkaa made jokes about, say, the tea, English tea, and also the judges at times did take it happily. So that gave us brownie points in some rounds, while in other rounds it was not very favorable for us. Especially, I think the round before the quarterfinals, we like the judges did not like our jokes as such. So, like, though we won that round, I mean, it was not very favorable to them. So that was a very funny aspect of it, how jokes can be a part of advocacy and the persuasion that happens inside a courtroom. So that was an interesting trivia, which I learned. Yeah.
I think I agree with Priyanshu there. Apart from all these three, I think during our quarterfinal rounds, as Mukund said, it was a very good round. It was a very intense round. Our arguing was very nice. Mukund and Aashkaa were on law, they were very good. But I saw the opponent team, the Australian team that was there, that eventually won the competition. And I was very impressed with the way they were encapsulating everything and just on time. I mean, it looked very well versed. It was very well rehearsed, and that for me has always set like a standard. That is what a good speaker speaks like. In whatever time there is, you encapsulate everything. You speak very slowly, not rushing yourself. So yeah, that was a problem we were personally facing in our practices and such. But I don't know how, but they just dealt with it so nicely. So yeah.
Right. As we know, legal teamwork is crucial in moot court competitions. How did your team foster effective collaboration, so to say, considering the diverse nature of the problem and to present a cohesive and compelling argument?
So
I think
again,
the researchers should take this question.
that's exactly what I was going to say.
I'll explain this. So basically, as said, we had four issues, and we had decided that we'll do in teams of two. I think that was a very good decision to start off with, because, as you said, IMLAM specifically, the law is very wide. You have contract law also, you have maritime law also, and maritime law also is a very niche kind of law subject. So you need to study maritime law first before you get into the specifics of the problem. So therefore, it was really nice that we could divide ourselves in teams of two. That allowed us to cover a wider area. So for me, I researched with Mukund on issues 1 and 3. So I know issues 1 and 3, and I didn't know a lot of things in other issues. I know, and I didn't need to, because I was the researcher. So that way, I think it was a very efficient method.
And also, as like adding on to Amitesh's point, I mean, initially the interesting aspect of IMLAM is that they don't give you the issues from before. So you have to sort of understand what's going on in the problem. So you have to read the moot problem and sort of break down into chunks and understand what's going on. So kudos to my team that they kickstarted with the process initially, and then culled out, I think, four, 5 issues, and we had to divide it amongst ourselves. And we faced some challenges with regard to the timings and everything, but like that's how it like works. Like, so the collaboration, the gelling of sort of ideas and having diverse things on the table sort of helps you to solve diverse problems. So that was a very interesting sort of an experience which, like, personally I had. Yeah.
I think just to add on to this, like, in all honesty, a lot of the mood process for us was also just try something and see if it works, if it sticks, right? The idea with IMLAM is that like, not only NUJS but Indian colleges as a whole don't have history at the competition. And in terms of like access to resources, specifically human resources, right, people who are in the industry that you can approach, there's very limited access to the same in India, because maritime arbitration is a very specific and niche subset of commercial arbitration, and it's not really well developed in India. And that's not like, on top of that, it's not necessarily a great thing that we don't have a lot of previous Indian teams that have done well at the competition previously to use their knowledge and kickstart our process. So a lot of our like research methods and how we went about drafting our memo and how we went about preparing for our speaking rounds, a lot of it was completely intuitive and flexible, in that we wanted to figure out what worked for us, since there was nothing that worked for previous teams that we could have drawn from. But again, I'm sure Aashkaa would have more to say on this.
Yeah, so we didn't really get much support from like the shipping industry as a whole or people who are practicing maritime law, shipping law during our memo submissions. But when it came to speaking, we started reaching out to like many people on LinkedIn, and that's where we got to know people who were practicing in the industry. So our speaking rounds went well because we talked to them and we gave our speaking practices to them, so they could tell us nuances of the industry, some practices, some very logical things that the industry has developed on its own, which you wouldn't find in books, or which you at least you wouldn't find in the books that we were looking at, because we were looking at very preliminary books, because that's what we knew. We didn't have someone to tell us you should maybe look there, that's the direction that you should look at. So that's the kind of support and guidance that we got during speaking rounds. And we just hope that the future teams get that guidance from the get-go, so that their memos turn out to be much better than ours and the speaking practices turn out to be much better.
Right. So one last question. What was the most valuable lesson your team learned from this experience?
I'm sure the experiences were very diverse. I mean, so there's no team experience, but I mean, people can share their like individual experiences. I mean, so for me, there were very interesting experiences when I went to London. So it was my first international trip for me. So there were various, I mean, funny stories. Standing on the London Bridge was a big thing for me. So I mean, apart that, that's the outside moot experiences, and also within the courtroom, things got tense at times, and it was jovial also. So things were like very spicy that way. Yeah, sweet and sour that way. Yeah. I'm sure others will be able to add on this. Yeah.
I'll
I'll
go
take.
next.
Oh,
Oh,
Aashkaa,
go
go.
ahead.
Aashkaa, go. Aashkaa, go.
Okay. So I think one of the bitter things about doing a moot is that it takes a toll on like your entire life for a very short period of time. So, and then you have exams coming in, and then you have other extracurriculars, co-curriculars, etc., things. So, at least for me, I think I took mooting too seriously, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have also like had fun in the process, like enjoyed the process. I didn't do that enough, but I hope in my future mooting endeavors, I'll try to have fun.
Yeah, so for me, I think one takeaway from this entire mooting experience was persistence, because like Ashka said, during our memo submission, our memo was not the best, but I guess our speakers, they were persistent enough to pursue those same points again and again. You know, during the vacations, we just went back to the basics and started from the scratch, and I think that affected our speaking rounds like very positively. I think if we had gone with the preparations with our memo that we had for our memo, I don't think we would have been able to qualify for the quarterfinals even. So yeah, persistence for me was a big thing, and especially for Imlam, because there is such a big timeline, you have a lot of time, so it's important that you just don't give up after a couple of months and you are at it for the entire timeline. So yeah.
I think for me personally, at least, a lot of it was down to consistency and flexibility, because, like Amitesh also said, our arguments evolved over time. What we had in our memo submissions was not the same as what we argued in our oral rounds. And even within our oral rounds, I remember every day we'd come back and we'd sit for a good 3-4 hours just amending our arguments for the next day, and it was intense, but it was also worth it because we could see the tangible improvements. And with respect to consistency, I think, again, like Amitesh said, you have to be able to put in the effort, put in the work every day or every other day.
I think we lost
I think
Mukund.
I got cut
Yeah.
off there. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, you have to be able to put in the effort every single day and really work at it. Otherwise, despite like the small number of participants in the moot, you really won't break because, like I said, we don't really have the pedigree, or Indian colleges haven't done well at the moot. So the only thing I can really hope for is that after this, at least we are able to inculcate a culture within our college, and hopefully Indian colleges do well henceforth.
All right, team. Thank you so much for your amazing insights. I'm very sure they're going to be very important for all the audience members. Thanks again for agreeing to be here. I, on behalf of ILCC, wish you all the very best for your journey ahead. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.